Why was everyone laughing at her before they even knew her name? The desert air shimmered around forward operating base Echo, a scar of metal and dust carved into Afghanistan's mountains. The Rangers stood in loose formation near the landing pad, boots grinding against gravel, sunglasses hiding the judgment in their eyes. Another chopper was inbound. Another batch of replacements. Supply techs, comms specialists, and one medical officer. Nothing special, or so they thought. The Blackhawk descended through clouds of tan dust, its rotors slicing the air like knives. Captain Alina Reeves watched from her office window, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. The outpost had been bleeding for weeks, men shot by a phantom Taliban marksman no one could find. The sniper had become a ghost story whispered over rations. 3 shots, 3 kills, always headshots, always from impossible range. Reeves leaned forward as the passengers disembarked. One of them stood out. A woman in desert fatigues, duffel on one shoulder, medical kit slung across the other. Her stride was calm, deliberate, almost too measured for someone just arriving in hell. No wasted movement, no hesitation. Her eyes swept the perimeter automatically, scanning for cover points before stepping forward. Lieutenant Maria Reyes reported to the command office 5 minutes later, her posture textbook, her tone steady. Lieutenant Maria Reyes, medical support for 3rd Ranger Battalion, ma'am. Reeves studied her, early 30s, olive skin hardened by sun, dark hair tucked tight beneath her cap. But it was her eyes that caught her off guard, steady, deep brown, too focused. They didn't belong to a re-echelon medic. They belonged to someone who'd spent years watching life through a scope. Your file says advanced trauma care and emergency surgery certification. That's impressive, Reeves said, scanning the paperwork. Yes, ma'am, Maria answered, just doing my part. Reeves paused. The men here have been under fire for 8 months straight. They've learned to trust slowly. Some might test you. I understand, Maria said. I'm here to keep people alive. What Reeves didn't see was the small, battered pistol packed in Maria's footlocker, an old M1911 with initials carved faintly into the steel, MPR her father's, the only piece of him she still carried. That night, Sergeant Walker introduced her to the Rangers during the evening briefing. 30 battle-hardened men sat scattered around the dimly lit room, arms folded, smirks barely hidden. Walker gestured toward her. Gentlemen, meet our new medic, Lieutenant Reyes. She's here to patch you up when things get messy. Laughter rippled through the ranks. Private Thompson, barely old enough to rent a car, raised his hand. Sir, does she even know the difference between a tourniquet and a trigger? The room erupted. Walker chuckled along, shaking his head. Don't worry, Thompson. I'm sure Doc Reyes has read all about combat medicine in her textbooks. Maria said nothing. She stood quietly, arms at her sides, face unreadable. Silence was her armor. When the laughter died down, she simply nodded. I'll do my job, she said softly. You just do yours. The nickname Bookworm started that night. It spread fast through the mess hall, the barracks, even the comms tent. Bookworm's good with bandages, they'd say. But she's no soldier. It was easier for them to believe that. Easier to mock the unknown than face the idea that someone might quietly be better than them. But while the others drank, played cards, or argued over deployment stats, Maria sat alone in the rec room reading. Manuals, medical texts, even field maintenance guides for weapons. Thompson once caught her cleaning her M4 with eerie precision, checking barrel alignment and trigger tension like she'd done it 1,000 times before. You sure you're not in the wrong line of work, Doc? He joked. Maria didn't look up. Clean gear saves lives, she said. You'd know that if you cleaned yours properly. Thompson had no reply. What none of them knew, what Maria never said, was that she'd grown up in the Colorado Rockies, daughter of Michael Phantom Reyes, one of the deadliest snipers in SEAL team history. Her father had taught her everything before she could even drive. Wind reading, range estimation, trigger control. He used to say, The most dangerous person in any room is the one nobody sees coming. But Maria hadn't joined the Navy. She walked away after her father's death, a training accident at Quantico that never sat right. She'd sworn she'd never be a weapon again. That's why she wore a medic's insignia instead of a rifle badge. Still, old instincts never really die. A week later, Maria joined her first convoy, a supply run to Checkpoint Delta. The ride was long and narrow, mountain roads twisting through terrain that screamed ambush. She sat quietly in the back seat, surrounded by rangers swapping stories about firefights, close calls, and impossible shots. "Best shot I ever took was 800 meters, bragged Rodriguez. Dropped a guy setting up a mortar, one and done. "How about you, bookworm?" Collins called from the driver's seat. "You ever take a long shot?" Maria smiled faintly. "I try not to point guns at people, Sergeant." That answer earned another round of laughter, but she didn't mind. Her father had always said, "Let them underestimate you. It buys you time." 2 hours into the trip, she noticed something, a flash on the ridgeline to the west. Sunlight reflecting off glass or metal. Scope glint. Every instinct screamed sniper. She opened her mouth to warn Collins and stopped. How would she explain recognizing something like that? What medic spots reflections at a kilometer out? She stayed silent. Minutes later, the mountain exploded. The lead Humvee vanished in a cloud of dirt and flame. The concussion rocked the convoy, throwing Maria forward. Automatic fire erupted from the ridges, disciplined, coordinated, not the chaotic bursts of insurgents. This was an ambush set by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "Contact, left ridge," Collins shouted. The Rangers fanned out, returning fire while Maria crawled toward the burning Humvee. 3 wounded, 1 critical. Her hands moved automatically, tourniquet, pressure wrap, airway clear, her mind detached, precise. Bullets whined overhead, dust stinging her eyes. Collins went down beside her, blood pooling from his arm. "Guess you're getting your first taste of real combat medicine, bookworm," he groaned. Maria didn't answer. She just kept working, fast, methodical, efficient. Her focus so absolute that even fear didn't have room to exist. The ambush lasted 10 minutes. The guilt lasted much longer. Back at base, Maria stood outside the medical tent long after the wounded were stable. Her uniform was stained with blood, not all of it theirs. The mountains loomed dark against the setting sun, silent witnesses to her failure. "I could have stopped it," she whispered. In her quarters that night, she pulled out her father's old leather journal, filled with equations, wind charts, and scribbled notes in neat handwriting. "The shot you don't take is often more important than the one you do," one line read. She traced it with her finger, remembering his voice. But tonight, the words burned. If she'd taken that shot, or even spoken up, maybe no one would have died. For the first time in years, she opened the case under her bunk. Inside was a folded rifle sling, worn smooth by time. She touched it, then shut the lid again. She wasn't ready, not yet. Over the next week, something in her changed. She became quieter but sharper, always watching, always calculating. The Rangers thought she was just shaken from her first firefight. They were wrong. She wasn't shaken. She was waking up. Then came the night that would silence every joke, every whisper. A supply team stumbled back to base, dragging Corporal Morrison, delirious, pale, infection spreading fast through his leg. Dr. Williams was away at another outpost. Maria was the senior medic on site. "Get him on the table," she barked. The sudden authority in her voice froze everyone in place. "Thompson, IV line now. Rodriguez, surgical kit. I need antibiotics, lidocaine, and saline flush." Morrison's blood pressure plummeted. His wound was black around the edges, sepsis setting in fast. The others hesitated. Maria didn't. She made an incision clean and precise, draining the infection before it hit his bloodstream. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm. She worked like someone who'd done this 100 times. Rodriguez watched in disbelief. Where the hell did you learn to do that? Anatomy textbook, Maria said, but her hands told another story. When Williams returned hours later, Morrison was stable. Outstanding work, Rays, he said, scanning the notes. That procedure saved his life. You've done this before. Maria looked him straight in the eye. Just followed the manual, sir. After that night, the jokes softened. The name Bookworm became less insult, more nickname. Morrison himself limped around base telling anyone who'd listen, "That woman saved my leg when everyone else froze." But not everyone was impressed. Sergeant Walker pulled her aside one morning. "Impressive work, Rays," he said, tone flat. "But don't get comfortable. Medical drills are one thing, real combat's another. Know your place." Maria didn't reply. She didn't need to, because deep down she already knew something he didn't. The place he was talking about no longer existed. The medic, the sniper, the daughter, they were all one now. That night, under a flickering light, she reread her father's final journal entry. When the moment comes, she'll know exactly what to do. The moment was coming. She could feel it in the wind, in the silence before dawn, and in the faint echo of her father's voice saying, "The most dangerous person in any room is the one nobody sees coming." Why did Colonel Reeves call an emergency briefing at dawn? The air over Fob Echo was still heavy from the night's chill, but tension crackled through the base like static. Every ranger could feel it, that quiet, unmistakable sense that something terrible had shifted. 3 men were dead. Headshots. Long range. No muzzle flash, no trace. The ghost sniper had struck again. Captain Reeves' voice carried over the gathered troops, calm but tight with fatigue. "Intelligence confirms what we suspected. This shooter isn't just lucky. He's skilled, trained. Someone's targeting our patrol leaders from distances exceeding 1,500 meters. 1,500. Even among elite snipers, that number meant respect, fear." At the edge of the formation, Maria stood motionless, hands clasped behind her back, her medical insignia catching the morning light. She could feel the disbelief around her, the muttered curses, the unease. Some of these men had never been this close to death until now. She'd seen it too many times to count. Reeves continued, "Special Operations Command is sending an evaluation team to assist with counter-sniper operations. They'll arrive tomorrow. I expect full cooperation." Whispers rippled through the ranks. SOCOM. That meant legends, operators who lived in shadows and rewrote doctrine with experience no manual could teach. The Rangers straightened instinctively, but not out of pride, out of pressure. When the briefing ended, Sergeant Walker cornered Maria outside the mess tent. His expression was carved from stone. "I want that aid station spotless by 800, he said. "SOCOM will be inspecting medical readiness." "Yes, Staff Sergeant." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Listen carefully, Rays. They're here to evaluate us, not you, your support staff, remember that. Don't make the mistake of thinking you're more." His tone carried more than authority. It carried warning, fear disguised as discipline. Maria nodded once, understood. But that night she couldn't sleep. Her father's words replayed in her mind, "When the moment comes, you'll know exactly what to do." The thought didn't comfort her anymore. It felt like a countdown. The next morning, 2 Blackhawks appeared against the pale sky, their rotors slicing through the mountain air. The entire base gathered as they landed, dust whipping through the compound. The doors opened, and legends stepped out. Navy SEALs, Delta Force, Marine Scout snipers, faces half hidden behind mirrored shades and silence. Among them was a tall man with silver in his hair, broad-shouldered, calm in that unnerving way only warriors who have survived too much can be. Lieutenant Colonel Noah Davidson. Captain Reeves greeted him with crisp formality, but even she looked uneasy. Davidson wasn't just another officer. He was the kind of man who carried history in the way he walked. Maria watched from the aid station doorway as the SOCOM team moved across the compound, evaluating everything: patrol formations, weapon handling, even how the Rangers talked to one another. Their presence felt surgical, as if they were dissecting the base one system at a time. By afternoon, Reeves assembled everyone in the main briefing room. The air was thick, heavy with anticipation. "At ease," Davidson said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried deep, even with the kind of weight that didn't need to shout to command obedience. "We're not here to judge your performance. We're here to keep you alive." He let the words settle before continuing. "You've been targeted by a professional sniper. The ballistic reports don't lie. This isn't some insurgent with a stolen rifle. The shooter knows wind, range, and elevation better than most trained marksmen. We believe he's former special operations, foreign, maybe hired." A murmur swept through the room. Even Walker shifted uncomfortably. Davidson glanced down at his notes, then looked up, scanning the faces. "We'll run a series of evaluations over the next 72 hours: defensive readiness, medical response, and precision marksmanship. There will be a competition tomorrow at 1300. Your best shooters will go up against ours." The Rangers straightened. A challenge from SOCOM wasn't an invitation, it was a test. Davidson's gaze swept the room, landing briefly on Maria. His expression softened, curiosity flickered just for a second before he moved on. It was nothing, yet it was. When the briefing ended, Walker found her again. "He's going to be watching you," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Keep your head down, Rays, I mean it." She didn't answer, but something in his tone, almost pleading, made her wonder what exactly he was afraid of. The next morning's inspection began at sunrise. Lieutenant Commander Pierce, Naval Special Warfare Medical, arrived at the aid station, clipboard in hand. Her demeanor was clinical, efficient, the kind of woman who didn't miss details. Maria stood ready, every surface spotless, every instrument gleaming. Pierce walked slowly through the space, taking notes. "You keep an exceptionally organized station," she said finally. "Your documentation is meticulous, but there's something I'm curious about." She flipped through her papers. "Corporal Morrison's sepsis case, the one you handled while Dr. Williams was away. You performed an emergency incision and drainage procedure, correct?" "Yes, ma'am." "That's not standard field protocol for medical officers at your level," Pierce said. Her voice wasn't accusing, just curious. "That's a surgical technique." Maria kept her expression calm. The infection was spreading fast. The medevac window was too long. I did what I had to do. Pierce looked up, studying her face for a long moment. Then she smiled faintly. "Good instincts. Sometimes that's what saves a man's life." When she left, Maria exhaled slowly. The inspection had gone well, but she could feel the edge beneath the praise. Questions lingered, always questions. That night the mess hall buzzed with rumors. Delta instructors were changing patrol formations, communications protocols were being rewritten, and the competition tomorrow, the friendly shoot-off, had become the talk of the base. Morrison limped over to Maria's table, grinning. "How'd the inspection go, Doc?" She smiled back. "It went fine. They didn't burn the place down, so I'll call it a win." "Good," he said, lowering his voice. "You know what everyone's really saying, right? This evaluation, it's not about readiness. They're here for that sniper. Word is he's taken out 14 Americans across 3 bases, all perfect headshots. 1 shot, 1 kill." Maria's chest tightened. 14. "Davidson thinks he's not Taliban," Morrison continued. "Says this guy's a professional, probably ex-military, Russian maybe, somebody trained." That word "trained" hit her harder than expected, because training meant purpose. It meant a mirror. Before she could reply, the mess hall doors opened. Conversation died instantly. Davidson entered with several of his operators, scanning the room with the detached awareness of a predator who sees everything. As he passed, his gaze met Maria's again, that same flicker of recognition. Not suspicion, something else, connection. He gave a brief nod before moving on. Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Weird," he whispered. "You know him or something?" Maria shook her head. "No, but maybe he knows my father's ghost." The attack came that night. A sharp crack split the silence, followed by another. The base alarm screamed to life. Red lights flashed. Shouting filled the corridors. Maria grabbed her med kit and sprinted to the aid station, instincts overriding thought. The first casualties arrived within minutes. 3 men from the eastern post, one barely breathing, chest collapsed. "Need a decompression needle now," she shouted. Her hands moved fast, automatic. No hesitation, no fear. When Dr. Williams arrived 10 minutes later, the worst of it was already handled. Over the radio, Captain Reeves' voice was grim. "Shooter engaged from the eastern ridge. Estimated distance, 1,600 meters." 1,600. Even Maria froze at that. Whoever was out there was good. An hour later, the gunfire faded. The perimeter was secure, though the ghost had vanished again. Maria was cleaning her instruments when the door opened. "Lieutenant Reyes," a voice said behind her. "Deep even Davidson." She turned, straightening automatically. "Sir." He stepped inside, eyes scanning the aftermath, the blood, the bandages, the quiet hum of generators. "Dr. Williams tells me you performed a chest decompression under fire. Textbook execution." "I followed procedure," Maria said carefully. Davidson's gaze sharpened. "That particular procedure isn't standard issue. It's usually reserved for special operations medics. Where'd you learn it?" "Advanced field training, sir," she said, her tone neutral. "We all adapt when we have to." He didn't look convinced. "You're from Colorado, right?" "Yes, sir." "Beautiful country, good terrain for learning patience and distance." He paused. "Your last name's Reyes. Any relation to Michael Reyes, Navy SEAL sniper, call sign Phantom?" The name hit like a physical blow. Maria's throat went dry. She hadn't spoken it aloud in years. "He was my father," she said quietly. Davidson nodded slowly. "I served with him in Iraq. Best marksman I ever knew. Saved my life once at 2,000-meter shot in crosswinds. I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you, sir." He studied her again, expression unreadable. "I'm curious, Lieutenant, the daughter of Phantom Reyes. Why choose medicine instead of marksmanship?" She held his gaze. "Because I got tired of watching people die." Davidson nodded once, a gesture of respect, not pity. "Understandable, but remember, sometimes saving lives means removing the threat that takes them." He turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. "Tomorrow's competition, I'd like to see what Michael Reyes' daughter can do with a rifle in her hands." Maria stood frozen long after he was gone. Outside, the wind howled against the mountains, carrying the ghost of her father's voice, calm, steady, unrelenting. "When the moment comes, Mia, you'll know exactly what to do." Tomorrow felt like that moment. What was Colonel Davidson really testing when he handed her the rifle? Dawn broke cold and clear over Fob Echo, sunlight slicing through the dust as soldiers moved in uneasy silence. The air felt charged, like the breath before a storm. The scheduled SOCOM evaluation was set for 1,300 hours, but everyone knew it wasn't just a training exercise anymore. This was a stage, and Davidson had chosen his player. Maria stood by the window of the aid station, the mountains rising like jagged teeth beyond the wire. The same mountains her father had once described as both enemy and teacher. She'd been up since before sunrise, restless, turning over the colonel's words in her mind. Sometimes saving lives means removing the threat that takes them. She didn't want to believe that, but she also couldn't stop remembering the sound of that IED, the screams that followed, the way silence afterward felt like punishment. Maybe her father had been right all along. Hesitation kills more than bullets. The door banged open. Walker. His jaw was tight, his uniform immaculate. "Raise," he barked. "Report to the firing range at 12:30. Colonel Davidson specifically requested you assist with equipment prep." She blinked. "Assist?" Walker's eyes narrowed. "He claims he needs your steady hands to check optics alignment. Don't read into it." "Understood," she said, but Walker's face betrayed something else, not irritation, fear. He leaned in. "Listen to me, Rays. Stay in your lane today. No grandstanding. No improvisation. You're a medic, not a marksman. Don't give him a reason to dig deeper." His tone made her pause. "Why are you so worried, Staff Sergeant?" Walker looked past her, toward the open desert beyond the wire. "Because people who catch Davidson's attention don't stay invisible for long." By noon, the range was alive with motion. Targets stretched out across the valley floor, 600 meters, then 1,000, then 1,200 white silhouettes shimmering in the heat. Rangers checked scopes and ammunition, whispering bets about who'd perform best. A few looked up as Maria arrived, curiosity flickering. Bookworm on the range. That was new. Davidson stood near the firing platform, speaking quietly with Captain Reeves. When he saw Maria, he gave a small nod of acknowledgement. "Lieutenant Rays," he said, "glad you could make it." She approached, posture rigid, eyes forward. "Sir." "I need your help inspecting a Barrett," he said, motioning to the long, black rifle laid out on the table. The .50 caliber behemoth gleamed like a weapon forged from myth. "We recently remounted the scope. I want to ensure it's zeroed properly before we start." Walker stood nearby, jaw clenched, his disapproval written plain across his face. Davidson gestured to the weapon. "Please, Lieutenant, you're good with precision work, yes." Maria hesitated only for a heartbeat before stepping forward. The moment her hands touched the rifle, something old stirred inside her. Muscle memory, dormant but alive, guided her fingers. She checked the bolt, the mount screws, the elevation knob. Every movement was smooth, instinctive, not something learned in manuals. Davidson watched closely, saying nothing. "You've done this before," he said finally. Maria's tone was neutral. "Every soldier's trained to maintain their weapons, sir." "Not like that," he murmured. Walker took a step forward. "Colonel, with respect." "Relax, Sergeant," Davidson cut in softly. "We're only verifying equipment." He turned back to Maria. "Go ahead, check the optics." She adjusted the scope with minute precision, rotating the turrets in careful increments. Left mount slightly loose, 1 degree of drift at distance. Corrected. Davidson nodded, visibly impressed. "Excellent. Raise, demonstrate proper prone position, please, just for reference." Walker's voice sharpened. "Sir, Lieutenant Rays isn't." "She'll be fine," Davidson interrupted again, his tone final. "All personnel train for standard firing posture. This is part of the demonstration." Captain Reeves arrived midway through the exchange. "Problem here?" she asked. "No problem," Davidson said smoothly. "Lieutenant Rays is simply assisting with technical verification." Reeves glanced at Maria, then back at him. "Carry on." Walker stepped back, his face hard with frustration. Maria lowered herself onto the mat. The world narrowed, her breathing, her heartbeat, the faint metallic scent of oiled steel. The rifle settled into her shoulder like an old friend. Her eye aligned with the scope naturally, no adjustment needed. Her body found the angle that years of her father's drills had burned into her muscle memory. She exhaled slowly. "Textbook form," Davidson said quietly. He leaned closer. "What's your sight picture on the 600-meter target?" Maria adjusted slightly. Centered, crosshairs aligned, 2 minutes of windage left for current conditions. Her voice was flat, professional, but the detail in her words betrayed expertise. Davidson smiled faintly. "Very well, 1 round, Lieutenant, confirm 0. The range went silent. The Rangers exchanged glances. Walker opened his mouth to object again, but Reeves shot him a warning look. "Let her fire," she said. Maria steadied her breath. The world shrank to the space between her and the target. Her finger found the trigger, light pressure, slow, deliberate, just as her father had taught her. The rifle thundered. Dust exploded around her, echoing off the mountains like a storm. Then silence. Through the spotting scope, Davidson froze. The hole was dead center, not near center, dead center. He looked back at her, his face unreadable. "Perfect hit," he said quietly. "Center mass, flawless technique." The rangers around the range erupted in disbelief. Thompson muttered, "No way, that was luck." Even Walker's expression faltered, disbelief twisting into something darker. Davidson wasn't done. "Rays," he said evenly, "how confident are you at longer ranges?" "Within reason, sir." "Would you attempt 1,200 meters?" Gasps rippled through the group. 1,200 wasn't a test, it was a declaration. Walker stepped forward again. "Colonel, that's beyond her qualifications. This isn't safe." Davidson's tone hardened. "Sergeant, unless you have specific safety concerns, I'm asking Lieutenant Rays to demonstrate." Maria didn't move. She could feel every pair of eyes on her, the disbelief, the curiosity, the sudden tension in the air. "I can make the shot," she said quietly. The word surprised even her. Davidson nodded. "Take your time." She adjusted the scope, fingers precise, movements unhurried. The distance shimmered in heat waves, the target barely visible. She inhaled once, exhaled twice. Her heartbeat slowed. Breathe with the world, her father had said. Then let it stop for just one moment. The rifle roared again. A full 6 seconds passed before the spotter called out, "Hit." Davidson leaned forward. "Center mass confirmed." For a heartbeat, the entire base seemed to hold still. Walker stared, speechless. Reeves' expression softened, pride, confusion, disbelief mingled together. The Rangers began to murmur, their laughter gone, replaced by quiet awe. Davidson approached slowly. His eyes met Maria with a kind of dawning realization. "Where did you learn that breathing pattern?" he asked. "That pre-shot rhythm. I've only ever seen one man use it." Maria looked up from the rifle, the weight of the truth heavy in her chest. "My father taught me," she said. "Michael Rays, SEAL Team 6, they called him Phantom." A quiet ripple spread through the crowd. Someone whispered the name like a myth being confirmed. Davidson's face shifted, surprise first, then recognition, then something close to respect. "I knew your father," he said softly. "We served together. He saved my team once. I remember that breathing, steady as stone." He looked back at the range, at the perfect holes torn through steel. "Now I see it again." Walker's jaw flexed. His authority, his world, was unraveling before his eyes. Davidson turned to the assembled Rangers. "You've been calling her bookworm," he said, his tone sharp as glass. "I'd suggest you remember the name Rays instead, because what you just saw," he gestured to the targets, "that's the work of a professional sniper, the kind you call when the impossible needs doing." Silence. Then softly Davidson said, "Lieutenant, I'd like to discuss reassignment. We could use your talents on active Overwatch missions." Maria's reply was calm. "Thank you, sir, but I'm not a shooter anymore." Davidson studied her, then nodded slowly. "Maybe not, but the mountains might have other plans." Before anyone could speak again, a sharp crack echoed from the southern perimeter, one single, distant rifle report. The base alarm screamed to life. "All personnel, defensive positions," Reeves' voice shouted over the comms. "Patrol under fire 2 clicks south." Davidson's composure shifted instantly from instructor to commander. "We've got men pinned down," he said. "Confirmed casualties. Precision fire, same shooter. He's here." He turned to Walker. "We need counter-sniper Overwatch. Get your best shooter ready." Walker hesitated. "Sir, Collins is the best we've got, but he's only accurate to 800 in ideal." Not enough, Davidson snapped, his eyes cut toward Maria. Raise. The word froze everyone. Walker's face went pale. Sir, she's not. She's exactly what we need, Davidson said. Right now, men are dying because someone out there thinks he's untouchable. She's the only person here who can prove him wrong. Maria's heart pounded. The world narrowed again, not fear this time, but clarity. She met Davidson's gaze. Give me 10 minutes to calculate wind and range. I'll need the Barrett and a stable firing point. He nodded. You'll have both. Walker stared at her as she turned to leave, disbelief and something like guilt shadowing his features. Raise, he said quietly, almost pleading. If you do this, if you miss. She didn't stop walking. Then I don't. The medic was gone now. The sniper was awake again. And somewhere beyond those ridges, a ghost with a rifle was waiting, unaware that the daughter of Phantom Rays was coming for him. How far would you go to silence a ghost? The base was chaos, alarms wailing, radios crackling, boots pounding against dirt. But amid the noise, Maria felt a strange stillness take hold. Everything slowed. Every sound stretched thin, clear. It was like slipping into a current she, once known, cold, precise, inevitable. Captain Reeves stormed through the operations tent, barking orders. 2 Rangers down, 3 pinned. Contact on the southern ridge. Enemy sniper confirmed. Davidson was already at the tactical board, his calm radiating through the storm. We can't get a drone up in time, he said. Too much interference from the mountains. We'll have to counter manually. Walker was there too, pale but trying to hide it. Sir, Collins can. No, Davidson cut him off, eyes hard. He'll get himself killed at that range. The shooter's above 1,600 meters, maybe more. He's reading our movements through mirage distortion. We need someone who can see through that. His gaze turned toward Maria. She stood in the doorway, Barrett slung over her shoulder, hair tucked beneath her cap, calm where everyone else trembled. Davidson nodded. You ready? Her reply was quiet, steady. I was born ready, sir. I just forgot for a while. 10 minutes later, she was lying prone on the ridgeline north of the base, her body pressed into the dirt. Barrett settled before her like an extension of her bones. The wind tore through the valley, cold and dry, carrying the faint scent of gunpowder and cordite. Her spotter, a young ranger named Blake, crouched beside her, binoculars shaking in his hands. Target out there somewhere, he said, voice trembling. We can't even get a flash, he's... Stop talking, Maria murmured. He froze. She adjusted her scope, scanning the southern ridge. The sun was beginning to dip, that cursed, golden hour when shadows stretched long and mirage shimmered like ghosts. Perfect sniper conditions. She could feel him out there, the enemy. Another phantom. Watching, waiting. Her father's voice echoed in memory. A sniper duel isn't about who shoots first. It's about who breathes last. Blake swallowed hard. Rangefinder reads 1,780 meters, crosswind at 6 knots east. Negative, she said softly. 7 knots. He's using the wind to cover muzzle drift. You'll see the distortion if you look between the scrub at the 3rd ridge line. Blake adjusted, eyes widening. How the hell did you? There, she whispered. Through the scope she saw it, the faintest glint of sunlight on glass. A reflection, barely perceptible. The ghost had made a mistake. He's repositioning, she said. He doesn't know I'm on this ridge. He's focused south. Davidson's voice came through her calm. Rays, we've got 3 pinned near the south rocks. If he shifts, they're done. Do you have eyes? Affirmative, she said. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger. Permission to engage. Granted. She adjusted her aim, heart steady. The range, 1,780 meters. Elevation difference, 40 meters down. Wind direction left to right. Temperature dropped 2 degrees since reading. Her mind worked like machinery, cold and clear. Blake's voice was barely a whisper. That's a long shot, ma'am. Maria didn't look up. Long shots are the only ones that count. She exhaled, slow, smooth, and the world went silent. Crack! The Barrett kicked against her shoulder, the recoil hammering through her bones. The round screamed across the valley. 4 seconds. 5. A faint spray of dust bloomed near the ridge, half a meter wide. Missed. The first miss in years. Blake's breath caught. You missed. Correction, she said, already recalculating. Mirage distortion shifted after the shot. He's adjusting his position. Her pulse didn't rise. Her breathing didn't falter. She adjusted 2 clicks left, 1 down. And then she saw it, the faint ripple of heat as the enemy fired again. The bullet hissed past, tearing bark from a tree behind her. Close, too close. Blake flinched. He's on to us. Good, Maria whispered. Now he'll move. She watched through the scope as the enemy shifted, rolling half a meter to the right. The sun caught the edge of his suppressor for a fraction of a second, all she needed. She inhaled once more. Crack! The sound rolled through the valley like thunder. Silence followed, pure, absolute. Through the scope she saw him slump sideways. No movement, no counterfire. Impact confirmed, she said quietly. Target neutralized. Blake lowered his binoculars, staring in disbelief. Jesus, that's got to be 1,800 meters. That's impossible. Maria's voice was steady. Nothing's impossible when you stop doubting your aim. Davidson's voice came over comms, low but fierce. Outstanding work, Lieutenant. You just saved 3 men's lives. Maria didn't reply. She was still staring through the scope at the body sprawled across the rocks in the distance. There was something strange about it. The precision of the setup, the position, the calmness even in death. Sir, she said finally, I need a retrieval team at that position, now. 2 hours later, as night fell, the recovery team brought the shooter's body back to base. The camp was quiet, not celebratory, just unsettled. Killing another ghost never felt like victory. It just bought time. Davidson and Reeves stood over the table as the corpse was unzipped from its bag. Maria watched silently. The man was lean, weathered, early 40s. His gear was advanced, customized rifle, rangefinder, wind gauges. Not insurgent issue, but it wasn't his equipment that froze Maria's blood. It was the patch on his shoulder, worn, faded but unmistakable. A trident. Reeves frowned. That's a SEAL insignia. Davidson's jaw tightened. Not possible. No teams have been operating in this sector. Maria stared at the mark. Her throat felt dry. He was Taliban, she whispered. He was one of us. Davidson looked at her sharply. Explain. She hesitated. That patch, it's not standard. It's old. Early 2000s era. That means he was trained in the same doctrine as my father. Reeves' expression darkened. You think this is connected? Maria's gaze stayed fixed on the body. If he was ex-SEAL, he might have been part of the same black unit network my father trained before she stopped herself. Before he died. Davidson turned to Reeves. Pull everything on decommissioned SEAL operatives who went off the grid in the last decade. We might be sitting on something deeper. Maria stepped forward, voice lower now. He was too good to be mercenary. He wasn't shooting for money. He was hunting. Hunting who? Reeves asked. Maria met her eyes. Me. The room went still. Davidson frowned. You're saying he knew who you were. Not who I am, she said. Who my father was. Phantom-made enemies, the kind that don't die easily. Davidson studied her face. And you think they sent this man here for you? Her answer was almost a whisper. I think they wanted me to remember what I am. Hours later, the base slept uneasily. Maria sat alone in the armory, the Barrett laid across her knees. The metallic scent of oil mixed with the faint trace of gunpowder. She cleaned the barrel slowly, methodically, like her father had taught her. Respect the weapon. It's the only thing that listens when the world doesn't. The door creaked. Davidson stepped inside, quiet, watchful. You should be resting, he said. She didn't look up. Rest doesn't come easy after you kill one of your own. He nodded slowly. I've been there. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Finally, she said, you knew my father better than you let on. Davidson exhaled. We weren't just teammates, we were friends. He believed in doing things the right way even when the system didn't. It cost him. She looked up. You mean his accident? Davidson's eyes darkened. It wasn't an accident. There were operations that went bad, ones buried deep. He found out things he wasn't supposed to, tried to walk away. People like that don't just retire, Lieutenant. They disappear. Maria's grip tightened on the rifle. Then whoever trained that man out there, he's still alive. Davidson didn't deny it. Maybe, but you've just painted a target on your back. She smiled faintly, a bitter curve. Good, let them aim, I'll aim back. He watched her for a moment, the calm, the steel beneath it. You remind me of him, he said finally. Too much, maybe. Maria's gaze softened, just a little. He used to say that silence is the only armor that never cracks. Davidson's voice was low. He was wrong, it cracks. The trick is learning what sound it makes when it does. He turned to leave but paused at the door. Get some rest, Rays. Tomorrow we start digging. If this runs as deep as I think, you'll need all your focus. After he left, Maria sat alone in the flickering light, staring at her reflection in the rifle's dark steel. She wasn't sure who she saw anymore, the medic, the sniper, the daughter, or something between them. Outside, the wind howled through the mountains, the same wind her father used to measure with a raised hand and a smile. Somewhere out there, she could almost hear him again. Every shot tells a story. Make sure yours says something worth remembering. She whispered into the dark, I'm trying, Dad, I really am. And for the first time since he died, she felt something shift, not peace, not forgiveness, but purpose. A storm was coming, and this time, Maria Reyes wasn't the hunted. She was the one taking aim. What if the ghost she killed wasn't the end, but the beginning? Morning rose over Fob Echo in a wash of gray, the kind of light that felt like it couldn't decide between day and night. The air was still heavy with last night's gunfire. Nobody talked about it openly, but everyone felt it. Something about that kill had changed the air. The Rangers didn't mock her anymore. They didn't even look her in the eyes the same way. It wasn't fear, more like unease, as if the quiet medic had come back from the dark carrying something none of them could name. Maria Reyes walked across the compound with her hands deep in her pockets, eyes hidden behind dusty glasses. To them, she looked calm. Inside, her mind was a whirl of equations, doubts, ghosts. She had taken a life at 1,780 meters, a perfect shot, a familiar shot, and that man's patch, the trident, wouldn't leave her mind. Davidson was already waiting in the command tent. His tone was clipped, efficient. We ran the fingerprints from last night's body through NATO channels. Hit came back 15 minutes ago. Maria stood at attention, silent. Name, Chief Petty Officer Brett Kavanaugh. Navy SEAL, retired 8 years ago. Served under your father for 2 tours. Davidson's eyes lifted from the tablet. You knew him. She searched her memory. The name rang faintly. My father mentioned him once, she said quietly. Said he was gifted but reckless, obsessed with proving himself. Reeves crossed her arms. He vanished after your father's death. No discharge file, no pension trail. He was erased, which means someone made sure of it. Davidson's voice dropped, and that someone might be the same person who sent him here. Maria stared at the map on the wall, thin red lines marking the mountains and valleys she'd memorized through the scope. Then this isn't about the Taliban. It's about cleaning up history. Reeves nodded grimly. We're dealing with ghosts from your father's shadow unit. By afternoon, the sun was blazing again. Maria sat outside the barracks, staring at her father's old leather journal. Its corners were torn, the pages yellowed, filled with range tables, sketches, and fragments of thought. On one page, written in a shaky hand near the end. If they come for me, they'll come for her too, not to kill her, to wake her. She read the line over and over, as if the ink might give up its secret if she stared long enough. Wake her. Guess you're not sleeping either, came a voice behind her. Davidson. He handed her a metal mug of coffee and sat down beside her, both staring out at the empty horizon. I can't stop thinking about Kavanaugh, he said quietly. He didn't shoot like a mercenary, he shot like a message. Maria nodded. He wanted me to see him, to know he was trained the same way. Davidson sipped his coffee. Your father once told me Kavanaugh was his best student, but there was something off, an edge he couldn't dull. After one mission, he started talking about a project called Eclipse, a black program, off-the-books sniping ops in areas where official policy said we didn't exist. I've heard that name, Maria murmured. My father wrote it here. She flipped open the journal, showing a scrawled note near the back. Eclipse, funding pulled, all assets burned, operative MPR compromised. MPR, Davidson whispered. Michael Paul Ray's. Her father. A cold wind swept through the camp, dust scattering between them like ash. He was compromised, Davidson asked. Maria shook her head. No, he walked away, but if the program was shut down, someone had to make sure it stayed buried. Davidson's jaw tightened. And now, years later, someone's cleaning up loose ends, starting with Kavanaugh. Maybe he went rogue, maybe he knew too much. Either way, whoever's behind this knows I'm here, she finished. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Davidson said, almost to himself, you realize this could get you court-martialed. What we're talking about, these files, these missions, they're ghosts for a reason. Maria looked at him. I stopped serving the system the day I buried my father. Now I'm serving the truth. He smiled faintly at that. He'd be proud of you. She didn't answer. She wasn't sure she believed it. That night the wind shifted again. Not just in the weather, something in the base itself. Radios crackled with interference. Power flickered. Drones lost feed intermittently over the ridge. Someone was watching them. Reeves came over the loudspeaker. All units, heightened alert. Possible electronic disruption originating East Sector. Davidson strode into the operations tent, jaw set. This isn't random. Someone's probing us. Maria was already there, leaning over a map. They're testing response time. Whoever it is, they're organized. How do you know? Reeves asked. Because that's what I do, she said. You learn to watch before you strike. A silence fell. The unspoken truth hung heavy between them. Maria was no longer the medic they'd met weeks ago. She was something else now, something older, forged in her father's lessons and the sound of her own rifle. Then the power cut. Total blackness, only the sound of wind and boots scrambling outside. Reeves swore, generators just died. Davidson's voice was steady. Get the backup lights, Ray's with me. They grabbed flashlights and stepped into the open air. The mountains loomed like dark walls against the fatting moon. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a flare arced into the sky, burning green. Maria's gut twisted. That's not ours. A split second later, gunfire erupted, short, controlled bursts, professional, clean. A team, not chaos. Davidson hid his calm. Echo base is under attack. All stations defensive posture. Repeat, all stations. A round cracked past them, tearing through the side of the comm tent. Sparks flew. The radio operator dropped to the ground. Maria pulled Davidson down behind a barrier. They're close, less than 300 meters. He peered out. How the hell did they get this far without detection? They jammed the radar, she said. This isn't an insurgent raid, it's extraction. Extraction, he echoed. For what's left of Eclipse, she said grimly. They're here to erase evidence. More shots, the metallic clang of bullets on steel. The compound erupted with motion. Rangers scrambled for cover while tracers ripped through the night. Maria's pulse slowed. She felt no fear, only focus. "Sir," she said, grabbing Davidson's shoulder, "we need height, the sniper tower." He hesitated. "That's exposed." "Exactly why they won't expect it." Without waiting, she sprinted for the tower ladder. Bullets sparked against metal as she climbed, each clang echoing like a heartbeat. She hit the platform and dropped flat, scope scanning the valley. Through the darkness, shapes moved, 5 of them disciplined, leapfrogging cover to cover. Suppressed rifles, military posture. Their pattern was too clean for local fighters. "Contact 5 hostiles moving north flank," she whispered into comms. "These aren't insurgents. Confirm visual." Davidson's voice came back low. "Copy that. Engage at discretion." Maria lined up her scope. The first man moved between shadows, steady, methodical, a perfect flank approach. She exhaled once. Crack! The body fell before his partner realized he'd dropped. The others scattered, returning fire. "Confirmed kill," Blake's voice came through from below. "Nice shot, Rays." But Maria wasn't listening. Through her scope, she caught a glimpse of something glinting under moonlight on the second shooter's vest, the same faded trident patch. Her blood ran cold. More SEALs, Eclipse operatives. She shifted aim, fired again, missed by inches, adjusted, fired a third time, silence. Another body hit the dirt. Davidson's voice cut in, calm but sharp. "2 down confirmed, 3 remaining, we're pushing north to your position." "Negative," Maria said. "Stay low. They're not here to overrun us, they're searching for something." A pause. "What?" "My father's files," she said. "The journal, they know I have it." As if to confirm her words, a bullet ripped past her, grazing the metal inches from her hand. She ducked. Another shot followed, closer, cracking wood. "They've got counter-snipers," she said, breath steady. "They're mirroring my position." "Then relocate," Davidson ordered. "Too late," she whispered. She dropped a flash grenade from her pocket and rolled away as it exploded, blinding light tearing the night open. She moved fast, 3 meters left, prone again, sights back up. The counter-sniper revealed himself for a half-second, firing through glare. Crack! Her round hit center chest. He dropped like a puppet cut loose. "3 down," she murmured, 2 to go. Reeves' voice broke through comms. "Air support ETA 7 minutes." "Too long," Maria said. "They'll breach by then." Davidson's voice was tight. "What do you need?" "Light," she said. "Give me light." A second later, a flare shot up from the base. The valley bathed in ghostly white. The remaining 2 enemies froze, caught mid-sprint. Maria's rifle thundered twice more. Silence, dust, stillness. Then nothing but the slow crackle of fires burning. By dawn, the attack was over. 6 enemy bodies recovered. 5 wore faded seal tridents. 1 had no insignia at all, only a single dog tag etched with 3 letters, ECL. Maria turned it over in her gloved hand, heart pounding. Eclipse. Davidson looked grim. "They didn't come to kill us, they came to retrieve him." "Kavanaugh," she said. "They wanted his body." "Or whatever he carried," Davidson added. "Something they didn't want found." Reeves approached with a sealed metal case. This was strapped under one of the bodies, locked, encrypted. Maria recognized the seal instantly, an old Navy cipher, her father's unit mark. Davidson looked at her. "You sure you want to open it? Once you do, there's no going back." Maria's voice was steady. "They've already come for me. I need to know why." She set the case on the table, pulled a screwdriver from her belt, and cracked the latch. Inside was a single hard drive, small, black, unmarked except for one thing written in faded ink across the surface. "For her." Davidson met her eyes. "Looks like your father left you something after all." Maria stared at the words, her breath catching. "For her." The message she hadn't known she was waiting for. Somewhere deep down, something inside her finally stirred. Not fear, not anger, but the unmistakable feeling of a door opening. And behind it, everything she tried so hard to forget. What if the truth you've been chasing your whole life turns out to be something you were never meant to find? The sky above Fob Echo was a washed-out gray, the kind that made it hard to tell dawn from dust. The air felt heavier that morning, not from the smoke that still lingered after the attack, but from the questions hanging over every conversation. The Rangers moved like men walking through fog, whispering about the ghosts that had come in the night wearing American uniforms. Maria sat in the communications room, the metal case open on the table in front of her. The small, unmarked hard drive sat beside her father's journal. For her, just 2 words, yet they felt like an anchor pulling her into the depths of something far bigger than she could see. Davidson entered quietly, closing the door behind him. Reeves locked down the perimeter. "We're clear for now," he said, voice low. "You still sure you want to plug that thing in?" Maria didn't look up. "He left it for me, Colonel. Whatever's on it, it's time I heard his voice again." He studied her face, calm, controlled, but her hands trembled just enough to betray what she was hiding. "All right," he said finally. "Let's see what Phantom wanted his daughter to know." The hard drive was old, military-grade encryption, probably from the early 2010s. It took hours to bypass, even with Davidson's clearance. The machine whirred quietly, and finally a single folder appeared. Eclipse Archive 7/Rays. Maria hesitated before opening it. Inside were a handful of video logs, timestamps ranging across her father's final months. She double-clicked the first one. Static, then his face appeared. Michael Ray's her father. Even through the grainy resolution, his eyes were sharp, alive, that same steady calm she remembered as a child. He sat in what looked like a bunker, a map behind him covered in coordinates and unit insignias. "This is Michael Ray's," his recorded voice began. "For whoever finds this, probably my daughter. If you're watching this, Mia, I failed." Her breath caught. The sound of his voice after all these years was almost too much to bear. "I was part of Project Eclipse," he continued. "We weren't supposed to exist. Black ops beyond black ops. Denied by Congress, funded through corporate channels. Our mission was simple: eliminate targets before they became wars, but we crossed the line." Davidson leaned closer, frowning. "Crossed how?" Michael's voice grew heavier. "We stopped killing for peace. We started killing for policy." He looked down for a moment as if ashamed. "Kavanaugh and I led a covert strike in Helmand Province. Officially, we neutralized insurgents. Unofficially, we eliminated witnesses, civilians, women, children. We were told they were insurgent families. They weren't. I tried to stop it. Kavanaugh didn't. He followed orders." Maria's eyes burned. Her fingers dug into the table. "No." Her father looked up again, eyes glistening. "When I tried to report it, command erased everything. They threatened your mother, said I was unstable, said I'd cracked. Kavanaugh disappeared 2 weeks later. I should have known then that he hadn't vanished, he'd been folded into something else. Eclipse didn't die. It just went deeper underground." He paused, his voice shaking for the first time. "Mia, if you ever find this, they'll come for you too. They'll try to turn you into a weapon again. Don't let them. You're not me. You don't owe anyone blood." The video ended abruptly. Silence filled the room. The hum of the old monitor sounded deafening. Maria sat still, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the frozen frame of her father's face. "They made him kill innocents," she whispered, "and when he refused, they buried him." Davidson rubbed a hand over his face. "Jesus, this wasn't just an op gone wrong. This was sanctioned murder." She turned to him, "And Kavanaugh helped cover it up, which means the attack last night wasn't random. They wanted this." She gestured to the screen. "They couldn't risk it being seen." Davidson's voice hardened. "We need to transmit this to command. If we can get this into the right hands." Whose hands? Maria interrupted. These people erased an entire unit. You think they don't have reach in Washington? He didn't answer because she was right. Hours passed. Reeves ordered the base into lockdown. Every patrol route changed, every frequency scrambled. But Maria knew it was only a matter of time before the next strike. Eclipse hadn't failed, it was still out there. Somewhere. She stood outside the aid station that night, the mountains stretching endlessly before her. The stars looked like bullet holes in a dark sky. The rifle leaned against the wall beside her, but this time she didn't feel its weight. She felt his instead, her father's voice, his guilt, his faith in her. You don't owe anyone blood. She whispered into the night, then what do I owe? Footsteps behind her. Davidson again. You okay? He asked. No, she said simply, but I'm still standing. He nodded. We got the second file decrypted. It's a mission log. Coordinates, communications between your father and an officer named Captain Everett Mason. Recognize the name. Her eyes darkened. Mason was his commanding officer, the one who signed off on the Helmand operation. Well, Davidson said grimly, according to this, he's still active. Civilian contractor now. Defense Logistics Front Company out of Dubai. And guess what? He's been authorizing supply runs in this region under a different name, Colonel Everett Marks. Maria's jaw tightened. He changed his name to hide. He's the one running Eclipse now. Davidson nodded. And he's the one who sent those men after you. For the first time in weeks, she smiled, but it wasn't the kind that reached her eyes. Then we find him. 2 nights later, the base lights dimmed as Maria and Davidson climbed aboard the Osprey transport that had been rerouted for supply verification. In truth, it was their ticket out. Reeves signed the falsified mission log herself. She didn't even try to stop them. Maybe she understood that sometimes justice didn't come with orders. Inside the aircraft, Maria secured her rifle and stared out the window as the engines roared to life. Dubai's a long way from here, she said. Davidson glanced at her, long enough to give you time to change your mind. She looked back, expression unreadable, not this time. As the Osprey lifted off, the base shrank beneath them, a speck of dust fading into the dark. For the first time in years, she wasn't sure if she was leaving a war behind, or finally heading toward the one that mattered. They landed at Al Minhad Air Base under false identities. From there, it was a short trip to the city, neon light and sandstorm haze, skyscrapers like blades cutting into the clouds. Davidson arranged a contact through old SOCOM channels, a systems analyst who owed him favors. They met in a dim hotel room overlooking the Gulf. The analyst's name was Foster, jittery, unshaven, eyes darting between them. You didn't get this from me, he said, plugging in a drive. Eclipse is more than a ghost program, it's private now, outsourced. They recruit from every branch, SEALs, Delta, even contractors, train them off books, no oversight. Officially, they don't exist. Unofficially, they've been operating for years. Under who? Davidson asked. Foster hesitated. A man named Everett Marks, but internally they call him the architect. Maria's pulse quickened. We need his location. Foster glanced nervously at the window. You didn't hear this from me, but there's a safe house 20 miles outside the city. Industrial sector. Only 2 names have access clearance, Marks and someone listed as R2. R2, Davidson repeated. Maria's stomach dropped, raised too. Her father's backup identifier. Foster looked between them. If that's you, then you're walking into a trap. Maria smiled faintly. Good thing I've walked through worse. They left at dawn. The road to the outskirts was silent, lined with skeletal construction sites and broken machinery. The building was easy to miss, old warehouse, rust peeling, one side caved in. It looked abandoned. Maria stepped through the shattered doorway, rifle raised, heart steady. The smell of oil and metal filled the air. Inside, rows of crates and outdated equipment stood like tombstones. At the center of the floor sat a single metal chair, facing a laptop that hummed faintly. She exchanged a look with Davidson. "They're expecting us." He nodded. "Stay sharp." She approached cautiously. The laptop screen flickered to life on its own. Then a video feed opened. Everett Mason, older, gray-haired, but the arrogance in his eyes was unmistakable. "Well," he said, voice smooth, confident, "if it is Phantom's daughter, I was wondering when you'd come knocking." Maria didn't speak. He smiled. "Your father was a good man, too good. He thought truth mattered more than control. You inherited that flaw." Davidson stepped forward. "You murdered your own men, Mason. You erased them." "I preserved stability," Mason corrected. "You think the world wants the truth. It wants control. Your father didn't understand that, but you could." Maria's voice was like steel. "You sent killers after me." He smiled again. "I sent reminders." She raised her rifle. "Then let me return the favor." But Mason only laughed. "You think you're the hunter here, Rays. Look around." Davidson's radio crackled to life. Multiple hostiles inbound. They were surrounded. Maria's pulse slowed again. Calm, cold, focused. Her father's voice echoed in her head. "When the storm comes, don't run. Anchor yourself, breathe, then fight." She chambered around, eyes fixed on the door. "Guess he taught me well." Outside, engines roared. Boots hit the ground. Eclipse had found them. And this time, she wasn't running from ghosts. She was ready to bury them. What if every ghost you've been hunting suddenly walks out of the shadows, alive, armed, and waiting for you? The warehouse was silent for only a second. Then the night exploded. Engines roared outside, black SUVs slamming to a stop in the dirt. The metallic clatter of boots followed, sharp and synchronized. Eclipse operatives, elite, precise, ghosts trained to move as one. Their movements reminded Maria of her father's training sessions, fast, surgical, terrifyingly calm. Davidson took cover behind a support pillar, weapon raised. "We're surrounded," he said quietly. Maria's eyes were already scanning the exits. 3 on the north flank, 2 east, 5 south. Breach formation. He glanced at her, surprised. "You can hear that?" She didn't look up. "You learn to listen when silence is the only thing that keeps you alive." The first charge detonated, a controlled breach. Shrapnel sprayed. The doors blew inward, dust swallowing the room in a cloud of firelight and metal. Maria dropped to one knee, rifle up, breathing steady. The world shrank to motion and light. A silhouette appeared through smoke, crack, down, another shadow to the left, crack, dust and silence. Davidson shouted, "2 down, moving." They fell back deeper into the structure, weaving through rusted scaffolds and forgotten machinery. Bullets ricocheted around them like angry sparks. The air was thick with cordite and heat. Maria hit the floor behind a toppled generator, reloading in a smooth, fluid motion. She wasn't thinking. She was remembering. Every lesson her father had drilled into her: wind, breath, focus, control. But this time it wasn't practice. This was survival. Davidson crouched beside her. "We can't stay pinned here. They'll flank us." She nodded, eyes sharp. "Then we stop them before they get the chance." She grabbed a smoke grenade from her belt, pulled the pin, and rolled it toward the open floor. The warehouse filled with thick gray haze. The enemy's lasers danced uselessly in the fog. Maria switched to thermal optics. Shapes bloomed through the mist, 5 heat signatures moving in from opposite sides. "Left 2 meters," she whispered. Davidson trusted her instinct. He fired once, twice. One target dropped, another fell back screaming. "4 left," Maria murmured. "No, 3. One's looping behind the column." She rolled sideways, sighted through the smoke, and squeezed the trigger. Crack! The last shape fell. For a heartbeat there was nothing but silence, heavy, ringing, alive. Davidson exhaled. "You always this good under fire?" She didn't answer. She was watching the laptop still glowing faintly on the chair. The feed flickered back to life. Mason's face filled the screen again, smug, calm, untouchable. "Well done," he said. "I almost forgot how dangerous your bloodline was." Davidson stepped closer, voice cold. "Your men are dead." Mason's smirk didn't fade. "My men are expendable. The data you're sitting on is." Maria stared at him, her knuckles white around her rifle. "You killed my father." "No," Mason said. "Your father killed himself. The moment he believed that truth mattered more than control, he made himself an enemy of the world he served. I just finished what he started." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You erased him." "I protected the mission," Mason said, his voice dripping with the calm cruelty of a bureaucrat who's convinced of his own righteousness. "And now I'm offering you the same choice he had. Join us, Rays. Lead what your father couldn't. Be the weapon the world still needs." Davidson slammed his fist against the table. "You're insane." Mason ignored him, eyes locked on Maria. "You've seen what happens when soldiers think with their hearts. You've buried them. You want peace. Then stop chasing ghosts and become one." Maria lifted the rifle and aimed directly at the laptop camera. "You know what my father told me about men like you." Mason's brow arched. "Do tell." She breathed in, calm, steady, her voice almost soft. "He said the loudest traitors always mistake silence for obedience." Then she pulled the trigger. The bullet tore through the laptop. Sparks erupted, the feed dying instantly. The room fell dark. Davidson gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." She didn't smile. "We're not done." They spent the next 2 hours combing through the warehouse. Every crate, every laptop, every coded file. It was an archive, an entire ghost operation buried beneath fake supply logs. Photos, mission briefs, surveillance maps. Eclipse hadn't just been a rogue faction. It had been woven into every corner of the modern war machine. Maria found a folder labeled Helmand, 2013. Her hand shook as she opened it. Inside were photographs, grainy, black and white, but clear enough to recognize faces. Kavanaugh, Mason, her father. And at the bottom of the stack, a single shot that made her heart stop. Her father bound to a chair, eyes bruised, blood at his temple, standing behind him, Mason. The photo was time-stamped 2 days after his reported death. Davidson looked over her shoulder and swore under his breath. He didn't die in an accident. Maria's throat closed. He was executed. She flipped the page. A single document followed. Operation Quiet River authorized termination. Asset MP raise. Classification compromised. Below, Mason's digital signature. Davidson's voice was low, burning. "We need to take this public. This ends today." Maria's voice was distant, hollow. "He begged them to stop killing civilians. They killed him for it. And now they want me to replace him." She dropped the file onto the table, staring at the photo again. Her father's eyes, even beaten, dying, still looked defiant. Still looking past the gun aimed at him. Still fighting. Davidson placed a hand on her shoulder. "Raise, Maria, we can't take this alone. You know what happens when people try to expose men like Mason." She turned toward him. "Then we don't expose them, we dismantle them." He blinked. "How?" She looked down at the hard drive, still warm from the laptop's dying sparks. "By giving them exactly what they built me for." By dawn, they were on the move again, an unmarked jeep barreling down a back road toward the coast. Davidson drove, scanning mirrors for pursuit. Maria sat beside him, silent, the hard drive resting on her lap. "Foster's secure channel is still open," Davidson said. "If we transmit this through him, we can leak it to every NATO terminal before they can block it." "They'll trace it," Maria said flatly. "They'll send everything they have." He gave her a sideways glance. "You sound almost calm about that." She shrugged. "Maybe I finally understand what my father meant. Peace isn't given, it's earned, sometimes at a cost." He was quiet for a moment. You sure you're ready to pay it? She looked out the window. I already have. The city came into view ahead, glowing orange under the early sun. Dubai, towers of glass and gold built on secrets and oil. Somewhere in one of those towers, Mason was still watching, waiting. They reached a dockyard just after sunrise. Foster was there, packing nervously beside a small cargo vessel. "You're insane," he hissed the moment he saw them. "You realize what'll happen if they catch you transmitting this. They'll wipe you off the map." Maria stepped forward. "Then make it count." He stared at her, something between fear and awe flickering in his eyes, then nodded. "All right. You'll have 1 minute of uplink before they jam it. After that, nothing gets through." 1 minute enough, she said. Davidson handed her the encrypted drive. "Once this goes out, there's no going back." She took it, her hand steady. There never was. They powered up the transmitter. The screen flashed green, signal acquired. Files began uploading: mission logs, footage, directives, every crime Eclipse had buried for more than a decade. One by one, the lies burned into truth across the network. But then the alarm started. Foster's console screamed, "They found us." Davidson looked out to sea, black helicopters rising from the horizon, fast, low, closing in. Maria didn't stop typing. "Keep the uplink alive." 30 seconds, Foster shouted. The ground trembled, bullets tore into the dock, containers splintered. Davidson returned fire, precise and unrelenting. Maria hit the final command, breath sharp. "Transmission complete," the console read. She yanked the drive free, stuffed it into her vest, and grabbed her rifle. "We move." They sprinted toward the edge of the dock as gunfire rained behind them. The air filled with the scream of rotor blades. A helicopter banked hard, its searchlight slicing across the water. Davidson fired a burst into its engine cowling. Smoke erupted. It spiraled down, crashing into the shallows with a deafening roar. Foster yelled, "Boats ready, go." They leapt aboard as the dock erupted in flames behind them. The vessel's engine roared to life, cutting through the surf. Wind tore at their faces. Maria looked back, the skyline receding, fire curling into the sky. Davidson slumped beside her, bleeding from a graze on his arm. "You think it worked?" Maria glanced at the encrypted drive still pressed to her chest. By now, the whole world seeing what they buried. Mason's done. But even as she said it, a cold thought took root. Mason had predicted this. He wanted her to do it. That smug smile wasn't arrogance, it was certainty. "What if this was the plan?" she whispered. Davidson frowned. "What?" "Mason. He wanted the world to see Eclipse, but not to end it, to replace it." A silence heavier than gunfire settled over them. Davidson gritted his teeth. "Then we find him before he builds it again." Maria nodded, her gaze fixed on the burning horizon. "We will." She touched her father's journal, still tucked safely inside her vest. "For him," she whispered, "and for everyone he couldn't save." The ocean stretched endless ahead, dark, shifting, merciless. Somewhere beyond it, Mason was already moving his pieces again. But this time the board had changed. Because the ghost they'd trained to obey wasn't following orders anymore. She was rewriting them. How do you kill a shadow when it lives inside the light? The storm had passed, but the sea was still restless. The small cargo vessel rocked against the waves as dawn bled across the horizon. Maria sat at the bow, her rifle across her knees, eyes fixed on the shifting orange line of sunrise. Every ache in her body pulsed in time with the engine's hum. The world had seen what she sent: Eclipse's crimes, her father's murder, the truth. But the silence that followed was louder than gunfire. Davidson emerged from below deck, his arm bandaged, face drawn. "You've been sitting there all night," he said. "I needed to hear the ocean," Maria replied quietly. "He used to say it sounded like breathing, like the world reminding you it's still alive." He nodded, sitting beside her. "We made it out. Mason didn't win." Her jaw tightened. Not yet. He glanced at her, wary. You think he's still out there? I know he is, and he's not running, he's waiting. 2 days later, the world erupted. News channels lit up with footage from the drive, eclipse ops, assassinations, classified footage of covert missions that weren't supposed to exist. Politicians called for hearings. NATO disavowed knowledge. Mason's name appeared in leaked reports. Defense contractor, advisor, security consultant. But he was nowhere to be found. Davidson stood in the small safe house they'd secured outside Athens, flipping through printouts. Interpol issued a red notice, he said. CIA wants to question both of us. You're being called a whistleblower. Maria didn't answer. She was staring at the photo on the wall, her father, smiling, rifle slung over his shoulder, sunlight spilling across the range behind him. If they come for me, they'll come for her too. Not to kill her, to wake her. I think I finally understand, she murmured. Davidson lowered the papers. Understand what? What he meant. They didn't just want to kill the truth, they wanted to control who carried it. He frowned, and now? Now I decide what to do with it. Her phone buzzed then, an encrypted signal, one she hadn't used since before the war. Coordinates, no message, no name. Davidson read her expression. Mason. She nodded once. He's calling me in. He rubbed his temple. You realize that's suicide, right? Maybe, she said softly. But sometimes dying isn't the worst thing that can happen. Living without answers is. He sighed. Then I'm coming with you. She met his eyes. You don't have to. I know, he said, but I'm not letting you walk into the dark alone. The coordinates led them to Switzerland, the kind of mountain estate built for men who never wanted to answer questions. Snow capped the ridges, the air so clean it almost hurt to breathe. The road ended at a secluded compound carved into the hillside. Cameras tracked them as they approached. The front gate opened without a word. Inside, everything gleamed. Glass, steel, quiet wealth. No guards in sight, though both knew they were being watched. The silence was surgical. Mason was waiting. He stood near a panoramic window overlooking the valley, a cup of tea steaming in his hand. He looked older now, thinner, his silver hair cropped close. But the arrogance was still there, that unshakable calm of a man who believed he had already won. Welcome home, Maria, he said. She didn't move closer. You don't get to use that name. He smiled faintly. You should be proud. The world knows your father again. And you, he gestured around the room. You made history, you exposed the machine, but tell me what changed. She said nothing. He stepped closer, eyes searching hers. The truth doesn't set anyone free, Maria. It just rearranges the cage. They'll cover this up. They always do. You've only proven how valuable control really is. Davidson's voice was low, dangerous. You sound awfully confident for a man whose empire's burning. Mason chuckled. Empires don't burn, Colonel, they evolve. While you were running, the world was watching. Fear spreads faster than justice. Governments are begging for stronger hands. Do you know what that means? Eclipse isn't dead, it's reborn. Maria's stomach sank. You used me. Of course I did. You were the perfect messenger, the prodigal daughter of the fallen hero. The world will rebuild its faith on your rebellion. That's how systems survive, through martyrs. Her hands clenched around the rifle strap. You turned my father into a ghost. You won't turn me into one. He smiled. I don't have to, you already are. Before Davidson could react, the glass wall behind Mason darkened, one-way mirror revealing silhouettes, armed guards, 10 at least. The sound of safeties clicking filled the air. Mason set his cup down. You could have joined me, you know, led what your father refused to, but you chose sentiment, and sentiment kills. Maria's voice was a whisper now. You're right. Her eyes lifted, calm, unwavering. Sentiment kills monsters. She moved faster than he expected, pulling the small EMP charge from her vest and slamming it against the floor. The blast pulsed silently, rippling through the room. Lights flickered, comms died, the guards' earpieces went dark. Davidson dove for cover as bullets tore through glass. Mason ducked behind a console, shouting orders that no one could hear. Maria fired once, not at him, but at the steel beam above. Shards rained down, cutting his path of retreat. She moved with purpose, every step echoing like a metronome. "Mason," she shouted, "you killed my father to keep a lie alive. I'm ending both." He aimed his sidearm at her. "You think this changes anything?" "No," she said, leveling her rifle, "but it stops you." The shot cracked, echoing through glass and stone. Mason staggered back, a red bloom spreading across his shoulder. He dropped to one knee, stunned but not dead. "You won't stop it," he hissed. "There's always another me." Maria walked closer, her voice almost gentle now. "Then let them come, but they'll know this: we don't forget our ghosts, we learn from them." She turned away as Davidson approached, rifle raised in case Mason moved again. But the man just knelt there, clutching his wound, laughing weakly. "Just like him," Mason whispered. "You couldn't pull the final trigger." Maria paused, her back to him. "No," she said softly, "that's what makes me nothing like you." Then she walked out. They reached the valley before the snow began to fall. The world felt painfully quiet again, not peace, just aftermath. Davidson's arm was bleeding, but he waved off her concern. "You could have killed him," he said. "I did," she replied, "just not the way he expected." He glanced at her. "You sure about that?" She looked up at the sky, wide, endless, clean. "Mason thought the truth was a weapon. My father thought it was a wound. Maybe it's both." He smiled faintly. "What do you think it is?" She took a long breath. The cold burned her lungs, but it felt real, honest. "I think truth is a mirror. You don't like what you see, you break it, but it's still your reflection." They walked in silence for a while, the crunch of snow beneath their boots the only sound. At the ridge, Maria stopped and pulled her father's journal from her jacket. She tore out the last page, the one he'd written before disappearing, and set it down on a rock. The ink was faded but still legible. "When the shot comes, let it be mercy, not vengeance." She watched the page flutter in the wind until it vanished. Davidson asked quietly, "What now?" Maria looked out at the horizon, where the clouds met the mountains. "Now I disappear." He frowned. "You can't just vanish, Rays. You're the only one who can." "I'm not the story," she said gently. "He was, and now the world knows him again." She turned, shouldering her pack. "You'll tell them I went west, that I wanted peace." He stared at her, realization dawning. "And where will you really go?" She smiled faintly. "Somewhere quiet, somewhere no one knows what I am." "Maria." She stopped him with a look. "You said it yourself, I'm a ghost, but even ghosts can choose what they haunt." Then she started walking, her silhouette fading into the white glare of snow and morning light. Davidson stood there a long time, the wind howling around him, until he whispered the only thing that seemed to fit. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak," he said softly. "It simply acts." Weeks later, reports surfaced of a lone sniper in Syria, targeting warlords, traffickers, and corrupt contractors. No insignia, no dog tags, just a signature left on each scene, a single brass casing etched with the letter R. Some said it was vengeance, others said justice. But those who'd known her, who'd fought beside her, bled beside her, knew better. It wasn't revenge that drove Maria Reyes. It was the quiet, unshakable belief that the dead deserved peace, and the living deserved truth. And though no one saw her again, legends whispered across the war zones that somewhere out there, in the desert wind and the silence between shots, the daughter of Phantom Reyes still watched. Not for orders, not for glory, but for the moment when the world forgot how to aim, and needed someone brave enough to remind it. because sometimes the most powerful shot is the one that finally ends the noise.